Hi everyone, this is Aida Sultan, your host for today's session, which is presented by Youth Speak Forum and powered by ISEC. So, in today's session, we are going to talk about mental health at workplace. Mental health is one of the important aspect in all of our lives that we need to reflect upon. So, for today's session, we have a special guest with us, Zarina Tariq, an empowerment coach based in Canada, and she has expertise in this domain, and she will be talking about mental health at workplace today. Hello Zarina, how are you doing?
Hi, Isa. Good. How about you?
I'm doing great. So tell us little about yourself.
Sure. Firstly, thank you so much for having me here. A little bit about myself. Like you said, I'm an empowerment coach. This is what I'm doing full time. I run my practice called Coaching with Z. And yeah, for the last 2.5 to 3 years, I've been coaching clients one-on-one and in group workshops. I'm a certified coach. I'm also certified in NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming, and also in cognitive behavioral therapy. And I'm also working to become a clinical hypnotherapist. So yeah, that's pretty much all about me. I think one thing I'd also like to share, given the topic of today, is that the reason this topic is pretty close to my heart, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak on it, is that, I do come from a background of like about 6 to 7 years in the corporate sector. I've worked in both Pakistan and also in the UAE, in Dubai, in the corporate setting, in multinationals. And it's given me a good insight into what the corporate environment looks like, what kind of, issues or challenges we tend to face, and how we can kind of overcome them. So
Yeah.
that's also, something that I help a lot my clients with, because I kind of understand where a lot of them are coming from when it comes to such workplace related challenges.
Yes, of course. I have gone through your profile, and you have talked about the mental health at workplace. That's why you are one of the great persons to come and have a word about it with us. So we can begin with what's mental health and how does it impact our lives. To just break it down, what is exactly mental health? How would you define it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, just like we have physical health, right, which everybody is, quite aware of, we also have our mental health, right? And it's just as important, if not more important, than our physical health. And both of them are very intricately intertwined as well, which I'll go into in a bit. But the way that I look at mental health is that it's basically our emotional, psychological, and social well-being,
Right.
right? That's our mental health. And this is something that impacts like our mental health, our emotional, psychological and social well-being is something. It impacts how we think on a day-to-day basis, like our thoughts. It impacts how we feel. So our emotions and the feelings that we're feeling, and it also impacts then consequently how we behave, how we talk, how we communicate. It also, has a really big implication on our capacity and our capability to handle stress and pressure.
Hmm.
Our resilience, it has a big, implication on our resilience, how resilient we are, how much of a capacity we have to nurture our relationships, right? And to really communicate openly. It also has a very important implication on our day-to-day well-being, or just our day-to-day happiness levels. Like what frequency are we vibrating on a day-to-day basis? Is it like a really low frequency, or is it like, are we happier on a day-to-day basis? So our capacity to basically to experience joy and happiness, right? It has a major implication on that. And then, of course, like I said, it also has an implication on our physical health, right?
Right.
They're both intricately intertwined. So a lot of clients of mine who I've coached on, they may have certain physical health related challenges, but when you kind of peel the onion, layer by layer, what you realize is that usually it's rooted in a mental health challenge that hasn't been overcome. So they're both, extremely interconnected. Um, and one thing I'd like to say, like just the last thing on this piece, is that, one of the biggest and most important differences between our physical and our mental health is the fact that our physical health is visible to the naked eye, right? You can see it.
Mm.
It's visible, it's tangible. So things like, doing your BMI, like calculating your body mass index, or like how toned your muscles are, those kinds of things are very visible to us. We can see it in a mirror, we can see it with our eyes. But when it comes to mental health, and this is also the reason why, part of the reason why it gets so easily ignored by us, is that it's invisible, it's not tangible, right? So
Yeah.
it's very like insidious, it can very easily be masked and ignored. So a lot of us become very, very we become experts in putting a smile on our faces
Yeah.
even though we're really not feeling it, or
Yeah.
we become experts in masking what we're actually feeling on an emotional level, on a psychological level, deep within ourselves. And this has really, really deep implications on how we as individuals tackle our mental health, but also, as it has an implication on how our societies and how our communities also, and even the workplace, for example, also tackles like mental health related challenges.
Yeah. Yes, I completely agree. And I feel like, that self-awareness plays an important role. But as you said, we just want to, put up a smile and we don't want to talk about it. We are so afraid to open about it in any kind of environment, be it home, be it workplace. So
Yeah.
why is there resistance, when it comes to mental health? What is your observation about it while working with clients? Why is, there is difficulty while they can't open up about, their mental
Yeah.
health if they are not feeling well, and they want to change this?
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a really, really fair question, Isa. And this resistance, I mean, there's so many layers of why there is this resistance. I think, one is that it's invisible. So not having that self-awareness to begin with is also a big part of the resistance, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't know that, this is my mental health, which is an issue, right? Which is something I've personally experienced, and which is something that a lot of my clients have also experienced, that, it's not something we're taught about. It's not something that's really
Yeah.
emphasized on in the education systems, even at the workplace at times. Now after COVID, there's been like a major,
Major.
renewed sense. Yeah, exactly. But it's not something that was really spoken about. And so there was just this lacking awareness around mental health. And I think that also is why there's resistance, because people don't know about it or didn't know about it. And I think the other reason is, like I said, there are lots of layers to it. So one, you don't know about it. And then the second one is the society that we are brought up in, the kind of contexts that our early environment, and specifically the societies. If we don't see people around us, like our parents or our siblings or our colleagues or our friends, talking about it openly, then there's a lot of shame around it, and there's a lot of stigma. It's like a taboo topic,
Right.
right? And so when we're growing up, we're very susceptible to these kinds of things where, if we feel, that this topic is something shameful or something that isn't the right thing to be spoken about, we
Mm.
take that in, we don't question it.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
it's just something that we don't like. It becomes more and more difficult to bring it to the table, even, for yourself and even in front of other people. So there is this really huge aspect of shame around it, which I think society also kind of feeds or has fed into our subconscious minds while we were growing up, which is why there's
That's why
this,
we find it, difficult to open up. Right? Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
completely agree. And while we are
absolutely.
having, the awareness about mental health, after COVID, we have it. we know that, our mental health is not at the right place. And,
Mm.
when our mental health is good, when our mental health is not good, we as a generation now are able to, recognize that. So the question here is, how does
Yeah.
declining mental health show up at workplace, as this generation
Mm.
has come into workforce. We are talking about Gen
Mm.
Z at the Youth Speak Forum.
Yeah.
We are addressing them that, mental health is important. And,
Yeah.
they have recognized that it is declining. So, how we recognize it as an individual,
Yeah.
what are the signs that are showing up on ourselves that we can see, but we are not acknowledging them. So, you
Mm.
can also discuss upon that.
Yeah, of course, for sure. Um, I think in the workplace, like in that context, the way that declining mental health shows up, actually, like in order to answer this question, I'd like to start off by first illustrating what good mental health practices look like at a workplace,
Mm.
and then I'll take it from there. So what good mental health practices and the results of those, what those look like, what those feel like is you, feeling focused, feeling productive, feeling like you have clarity on what your role is, on what your job description is, for example, on what your responsibilities are. You feel this sense of psychological safety, which is really important. And I've coached a lot of clients where there's no sense of psychological safety because they either have had a bad experience in the past with like a really aggressive manager or sorts, or they just don't feel like it's a safe space for them or a secure place for them to voice their concerns and voice their opinions openly and
Right.
transparently.
Yes.
But when you have that sense of security and that sense of psychological security, that has a major um, positive impact on your mental health and even on your focus and productivity at the workplace, right? Because you need to feel safe
Yeah.
in order to be productive. If you feel fearful constantly, you're not even operating
You
with like
can't, yeah,
using
you
your
can't
entire.
perform. Yes.
Exactly,
Mm.
exactly. Other than that, like, other good mental health practices at the workplace, like what it kind of looks like is having healthy competition, right? Not like the savage competition, but healthy competition, which nurtures relationships and connections amongst your colleagues and coworkers. But at the same time, there is that like ambition and there is that motivation and drive to outperform each other. um, this also is like tightly linked to having having a good level of motivation, which also gets impacted by the amount of you know focus your company is bringing to rewards and recognition. So are they recognizing and acknowledging your efforts and your achievements at the workplace? Because that's a very, very important piece of having a good healthy level of motivation at the
Yes, for
workplace.
the employees, yeah.
Exactly.
Mm.
So that's important. Other than that, like the way I would describe a good workplace to be in is everybody respects each other. Everybody respects each other's time. So no matter where you are on the food chain of hierarchies or managerial levels, your time is respected, and so is theirs. It's like this two-way mutual respect. You have that openness to give feedback, be it to your manager or even be it to your coworker, and you also have that openness to receive feedback with a growth mindset in mind versus kind of getting defensive and hiding your mistakes, which is a very fixed mindset
Yeah.
kind of situation. um, and yeah, and finally, you have the space to rest and recuperate so that you can come back on a Monday, you can come back on a Tuesday morning and a Wednesday morning well rested, recuperated, and refreshed enough to then have that focus and productivity to go into the new day, and motivation, of course. So that's all what like a great world looks like, or like a great workplace looks like. And this is not supposed to be only for the lucky few. Like whoever is watching this, I really just want to tell you that this is not like supposed to be only for lucky individuals who are in just amazing workplaces. you need to assert these rights. These are your rights working for any kind of a company. And when in this entire puzzle or this entire like painting that I've kind of drawn, like painted for you, even one piece goes missing, um, it kind of just leaves a gaping hole, and a gaping void. And that's when these declining mental health symptoms start coming up. And mostly, um, the main people who bear the brunt of it are either, like mid-tier management or like people at the bottom of the food chain, because that's where people kind of like keep layering their stress,
Yeah.
and passing down their stress.
Mhm.
Um, and the way that this looks like, if I were to just kind of summarize it into like three major points, the first way that I've noticed like mental health declining in the workplace is that motivation levels go down. Okay. And work-life balance kind of stuff is not there. So you only are basically focusing on your work, on being productive, on, performing and proving yourself at the workplace. This is very, very common. And this
Yeah,
is
that
something I've
becomes,
seen
yeah,
among,
toxic. Yeah. Like at
yeah,
point, yeah. Mm.
exactly. It's also very common, Isa, because when we graduate and we go into our first jobs, we're
Mm.
so obsessed with and rightly so to an extent, we're so
Yeah,
obsessed with
but
proving ourselves,
mhm.
right, to our managers. We're so obsessed with proving our worth and proving our place and all of that, that we start setting the wrong precedents. Like we start working weekends, we start pulling all-nighters, we start with all these kinds of things that we were used to doing in university and we were used to doing in school. But the major difference between, and again, this is a really important like public service message that I just want to share with all the folks watching this, is that the major difference between your work life and the life you had when you were in university or in school or college is that in school and college, you were getting that summer break. You were getting, like a week off in between, exams and so on and so forth. You'd have one class a day or two classes a day sometimes, and you'd have that time to rest and recuperate. There was always like a series of small sprints. You'd pull a couple of all-nighters, and then you'd get time to rest and recuperate. The thing with your work life is that it's kind of permanent, right?
Yeah.
There's no, it's like this marathon. Like it just keeps going on and on and on. Work is never ending. It will never end. When you finish today's project, you will be given tomorrow's project today, and like so on and so forth. So I'm not saying that we should stop working as much, like we shouldn't perform, but I'm just saying that we need to keep that mindset of this needs to be sustainable for me.
Yeah.
Those all-nighters that we used to pull in school and university, they're not sustainable, like from a physical health and a mental health perspective. They're not sustainable because if you pull an all-nighter tonight, tomorrow your productivity will dwindle and you'll feel the effects of it. And if you keep doing it for weeks and weeks and months on end, you will definitely reach a point where you start to feel burnt out.
Yeah, it's important to take, breaks in between and, reflect
Yeah,
upon like what are you, putting your energy into, if it's worth it
yeah.
or not, and, it's impacting your mental health. So, here when, after university life, there is this, race where you enter and you are just, going and going, and there is no break, to be honest, but
Yeah,
you need to take that break for yourself in between and reflect, of course. And in
absolutely.
today's the generation, the Gen Z generation is working during their university life. So they are juggling between, they are either doing freelancing, doing internships, and they and also
Mm,
taking their university life along the way. So they
mm,
have they tend to forget to take care of their mental health in order to what you mentioned, to prove themselves. Like they
yeah,
they constantly want to do something so they can prove to their peers around that we are capable of this, and in that race they tend to forget that their mental health is declining. So
yeah.
yeah, so
I
it's great.
think you've,
Yeah.
yeah, like thank you for sharing that. It gives such a good insight into, how the generations are like, from millennials to Gen Z, how they're kind of evolving. And while when I'm coaching my Gen Z clients also, I'm just so pleasantly surprised by their entrepreneurial spirit
Yeah.
and, how proactive they are and how they're just doing so much. But
Mm.
at the same time, it begs the question that, like, what why are you doing this? What is the motivation? Is it
Yes.
only extrinsic motivation, like you said, right?
Mhm.
Like, is it just to prove yourself? Is it just to keep adding things to your resume so that it becomes a 10-page long, like, book? Or
Or it's actually adding the
is
value.
it
Yeah.
something that's really like you're enjoying it, or it's adding in the effort and the energy that you're spending? And that doesn't mean that, they shouldn't, like, we
Mm.
shouldn't start doing so much. Like, yes, for sure. But
Yeah.
there needs to be that prioritization and us being very clear on what your kind of goals and what your driving forces and motivations are, so that you start to, slowly and gradually start getting more and more focused on the things that give you most fulfillment, and the things that give you like the most bang for your buck, and, like, the effort you're putting into it.
Yeah, I completely
Yeah.
agree with you. It breakdowns to these points that, you are doing so much, but, if it's actually adding, value to your life, that the
Yeah.
energy, it's, basically the exchange of energy that you are putting into your actions, and it is not, impacting your mental health. And as in this generation, I feel the same. If you are
Mm.
putting your energy into something and you are putting your efforts, but it should not cost you your mental health, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if it's costing you mental health, it's not worth it, to be honest, because that productivity isn't going to count if at the end of the day you don't have a learning that adds value to
Mm.
your life, and yeah, gives you a great perspective towards life. So the
Yeah.
ways, also you mentioned that how we can improve the mental health at workplace by giving
Yeah.
rewards, and by being, how the balance can be maintained, because as employees,
Yeah.
or as employees, we recognize, we are making ourselves aware, but what changes that the organization need to make, how they can
Mm.
also add up to the mental health aspect, they can,
Yeah.
what are the ways they can come up with, so that the employees also have that sense of thinking, my mental health is important for the
Yeah.
organization. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, one point that came to my mind as you were speaking was that I think you've underlined the importance of just taking note and being really, really aware of the symptoms and the signs of your declining mental health when it comes to, even if you're still not in the workforce, but you're like kind of, like you said, how
Mm.
Gen Z is doing, like, freelance internships, XYZ, like various things, has their own business, and then they have university as well. Um, it doesn't mean you don't need to do all of those things. It just means that you don't want to reach a point where you get so profusely burnt out that then it becomes so much more difficult to get yourself out of that slump.
Yeah.
And burnout is like a miserable place to be. I wouldn't wish it on my, even worst enemy, like, even though there is none, but still, um, like, because it's a point where everything starts feeling very pointless. It's a point where you have no motivation to do anything. Everything feels pointless. You lose focus. You're not productive. You just don't feel like, there's just any, like, you're just basically burnt out. Like, you have no energy whatsoever left, and regardless of what you do in those moments, everything just seems really bleak.
Mm.
And in those moments, it's really important to take a step back, to regroup, and most importantly, not just use a band-aid method, right?
Mm.
Because band-aids generally, like, as a society, we love band-aids. Like, we
Yeah.
say, okay, fine, you know what, like, I'm severely burnt out, I'll go for like a 4 day or a week long or even a 2 week long vacation, I'll come back and do the same grind. But that's a band-aid. It's not you actually taking a look at your
Not a long-term
lifestyle.
solution. Yeah, it's for short-term.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's short term, and also it's not tackling the root cause,
Yeah.
right?
So
So
you are
if the root
basically are not
cause,
understanding, how to deal with that burnout, that comes to the part that how we deal with that burnout. Okay. If we,
exactly.
yes, if we are
And
facing that.
also why, And also, why is that burnout coming out? Like,
Yes.
why are you
Why
burning
is it
yourself
coming?
out?
Hmm.
So are you burning yourself out because, you have, I don't know, like certain limiting beliefs that you are dealing with or have been dealing with, of unworthiness, of having to prove yourself in
Yeah.
order to feel worthy. And if that's your motivation, then you'll keep burning yourself out, because it becomes like an addiction to all of these things that you're doing. You're constantly addicted to, I'm going to get this A and then I'll feel good enough. I'm going to get this promotion, then I'll feel good enough. And then the second you achieve it, you feel like, okay, what's next? What's next?
Hmm.
What's next? And you never end up living in the moment and appreciating the here and now, but you're constantly looking at the future, and you have this void inside you, which you're trying to fill in with a lot of work, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but it's just never getting filled, right? That's when you really need to take a step back and understand, like, okay, where is this coming from? I need to do the internal work. And that's by the way, where I was personally in my journey also. So, I can speak from experience, and like also a lot of my clients have very, very similar stories. So I can speak from their experience and my own, that it's very important to, yes, make those lifestyle changes which prevent you from getting burnt out in the first place, but also understanding what is making you drive yourself this hard. Like,
Hmm.
what is it that's making you drive yourself this hard? Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, you talked about limited beliefs. So, I want to touch upon that. What is the, negative impact of having limited beliefs? We of course have limited beliefs, and some beliefs that we don't want to change, and we want to stick
Yeah.
with them, but they surely
Mm,
have a negative impact. Because if I talk about my experience, I also had some beliefs that were limited to a point, but if I had to grow out in the world, I had to just remove them, and just what I
mm.
can say, to renew them in a way, how the life was
Yeah,
changing around me. So it surely have some negative impact. So can you touch upon that?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question, and something I help like a lot of my clients with. So I can tell you from all that experience that, limiting beliefs come up in all shapes and forms. Sometimes we know what they are, and sometimes we don't know the ones that we're subscribing to. So
Yeah.
imagine it's like a YouTube channel or an Instagram page that you're following or subscribe to, and it's basically always at the top of your news feed, and you're always consuming that content, but you may not be aware that you're consuming that content, and that content is also negatively affecting your self-esteem, your mental health, and the kind, like the nature of the thoughts and the feelings that you're feeling on a day-to-day, moment-by-moment basis. I'll give you an example. Like an example could be, it could be about yourself. It could also be about the world around you or about certain people in general. So, it could be that like the universe is always out to get me. It could be like, I'm an unlucky person.
Yeah.
I never get my way. Or it could be more insidious, like the one I mentioned earlier, and more deep than that, which is, I'm just not worthy,
Hmm.
or I'm unloved, or I don't belong. I'm different. I'm always going to like be left out. So all of these kinds of things, they kind of trace back to our early years when we were, growing up. And there's certain like pieces of evidence that we take to form these limiting beliefs. And then as adults, without even realizing, 90% of the time, we don't even realize that we're subscribing to a limiting belief that's limiting us to such a large extent. This is what I work with my clients to kind of uncover, which is a big part of it. And then the other part is to kind of, like you said, rewrite the story, rewrite the narrative, because our mind works in such a way that if we tell ourselves that we're unlucky, right? Or for example, that, we're bad with money or anything of that sort, any kind of limiting belief, we will only gather evidence for that belief, and we'll keep kind of,
Adding up
supporting
to
and
that. Yeah.
reinforcing
Hmm.
exactly and feeding that belief day by day, moment by moment. um, and if we start to slowly and gradually rewrite that story, and especially, work with the subconscious mind, which is super important, Um, so then, and this is like deep work. So whoever is watching this and they're getting interested, I would highly recommend that
Yes.
yes, you start your own personal journey, but also seek support.
Yes,
Seek
that's very
support. There are
important.
experts. Yeah, there are experts out there who will save you a lot of time,
Mm.
trial and error, and effort. And they can get you there much faster. But most importantly, with like a nice, safe space, non-judgmental space, which will be much more reassuring and supportive for you to kind of go on this journey.
Yes, I
But
completely
yeah,
agree with
I
that.
know that we don't have a lot of time left, but like, yeah, I know
Yes.
we don't have a lot of time left, Aiza, but I just thought that when you shared the topic with me, one piece that I don't think I've had the opportunity of sharing so far
Yes,
has been
please
on
go
ways to kind of improve your mental health in the workplace.
on.
Yeah. So I'll just spend like a couple of minutes shedding light on that because I think that's important. If
Yeah,
that's good with you.
yes, yes, because that's a very important highlight of our session, that what
Yeah.
way we can, just give to our audience, that they can, take take key takeaways from here, and can apply to
Yeah.
their lives. Yeah, for sure. You can move forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, awesome. So the couple of thoughts that I had put together, as I was thinking about this topic was like at the workplace setting, first and foremost, like I think we've already spoken about this also, is just be very conscious and be very, very aware of those invisible symptoms that usually get masked or ignored.
Mm.
Just be very aware of them. And once you start feeling it, that means that you need to take notice and you potentially need to take action. Now, that action could be something as simple as integrating small breaks through the course of your day, or it could be something as simple as like, having a good nighttime wind down routine where you just, turn off all your notifications on your phone, which all of us should be doing regardless. But a lot of the times I see people who do not turn off any of their notifications, and until the moment they go to sleep, they're still going through their work emails, work messages, so on and so forth. That's not allowing your critical filter, your subconscious mind to actually rest and recuperate. You start dreaming of your work related issues as well that way. So
Yeah.
it's really important for you to give that rest and recuperation to your mind. Otherwise, it'll start impacting your mental health, but most importantly, also your focus and productivity at the workplace. So take notice and take action.
Mm.
Um, and I think the two other points that I had thought about, and they're quite specific to, my personal experience, but also a lot of experiences of my clients, is number two is to kind of seek support at the workplace, right? And a big part of building your resilience is having that support system. And that support system can vary in shape and form, but one really helpful way is to have a mentor in the system, to form a mentorship relationship with somebody that you look up to at your workplace, and invest in that relationship with them. It can be someone who you look up to, who's potentially like you find some similarities with, someone who you aspire to be. You go to them and you let them know that I would really love for you to be my mentor in the system, and you give them reasons why. And those are the relationships that can really, really help you, because it's not your manager. It's
Mm.
not somebody who's going to be like judging you and your performance rate evaluation or anything, but it's someone who's there to support you, and they'll be happy to do it because they're senior than you, and they can probably see their younger self in you. So they want to give back. So
Mm.
do that and create those mentors. And you don't need to have 10. With mentorship, it's usually quality over quantity any day. So just start with one, and just make sure that you invest in that relationship. Have like monthly connects with them, or quarterly connects with them, or on a need basis. And while it may seem like, oh my God, I have so much work, I need to now focus on this also, but it's going to really, really um, reap benefits for you.
Yes, I completely agree
Yeah.
with everything, and it is quite relatable. The mentor thing,
Yeah.
it's to seek
Hmm.
support, and I would
Yeah.
definitely want convey this message that seeking support is, the biggest gift you give yourself, because
Yeah.
that is something, you can connect with people, and that gives you the reassurance that, I'm not alone here, and I can
Yes.
work towards my
Yes.
mental health. I can work towards, improving myself. So yeah, it yeah, it
100%.
is, major key takeaways that, the audience can take from here. Yes.
Absolutely. And the more we talk about these things, the more we dismantle shame around it, right? So shame thrives when it's not talked about. So
Yeah.
the more you kind of talk about that, doesn't mean you need to talk about like every Tom, Dick, and Harry, but it means that, when you have and you talk about the challenges and you have a safe space to express yourself,
Mm.
and you also form a safe space, a non-judgmental safe space
Yeah.
for your close friends and family members to express and colleagues to express themselves, that can be probably the biggest gift that you can give to anybody.
Yes. Of course.
And if you come across, for example, like tips and tricks, or even like podcasts or experiences of your own with, like, let's say, a coach or a therapist or whatever, or maybe in a webinar or a course, share it with other people. Share it with other people, because that's probably the only way that we as individuals can start breaking this stigma around mental health.
Of course.
Yeah,
Yeah. It was, amazing talking to you, Zarina. And, I think we have covered the
likewise.
most part. And, it was,
Yeah,
the information that you have shared is, very valuable. And this is mental health is the thing that we need to talk about more and more. And so, people are aware, and, they can, work towards it. It is, definitely going to improve their lifestyles. So, yes, thank you so much.
100%. Thank you. Thank you for having me. All right, Isa. Bye.